Good morning to you and welcome to Newday Saturday edition. My name is Abna Tebi. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we are streaming online around the world at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. As usual, we're running from now till 9:50, where we bring conversations here to a close. But before then, as usual, we'd have done some interesting analysis of topics that we will be looking at on the show. We encourage you to send through your comments, your remarks, your contributions to these topics that I'll be outlining out very soon to you, and send them to our WhatsApp line 050-06-07070, and we'll try as much as possible to read them and share them with the rest of the world. Today, we'll be looking at a number of interesting topics that made the headlines during the week. Of course, we'll start off with the Nation Builders Corps that was launched this week after months of the Finance Minister's first introduction of this concept during his reading of the 2018 budget in Parliament, I believe sometime in November last year. Now, the Nation Builders Corps, NAPCO for short, is aimed at employing some 100,000 unemployed graduates to, among others, enhance their skill set for the job market for a period of 3 years. Now, though the scheme has been commended, there are concerns about its sustainability, as well as concerns about how this scheme will achieve the objectives for which it has been set up. Meanwhile, claims by the Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Mr. Ignatius Bafwewa, that government has created over 1 million jobs in the formal sector between January 2017 and March 2018 has been subjected to critical scrutiny and analysis. And today on the show, we shall be looking at this claim by government, over 1 million jobs created in the informal sector. Of course, we'll also examine the NAPCO. We'll also try to unpack some fine details that are coming out of the launch of the program. We'll also turn our attention to CLOGSAG, that is the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, who are complaining that special assistants are taking over their jobs. Now we will be looking at this claim, what has led to this claim. Indeed, CLOGSAG, for instance, is saying that the Minister of Finance alone has over 30 special assistants, and CLOGSAG has vowed to embark on an exercise to rid the ministries of the influence of government special assistants. So today on the show, we shall be looking at the civil service, a service established by an act of parliament with the noble objective to assist governments in the formulation and implementation of government policies for the development of the country, and how it is that such an important institution of state has become endangered, if you like to put it that way. Now, we shall be examining this CLOGSAG development and how we got to this point and how we intend to get out of this if we decide that that is the way to go. Also up for discussion is the commemoration of World Press Freedom Day, and the day was commemorated in Ghana, Ghana being the host of this year's World Freedom Day celebrations. Now, while journalists in Ghana celebrate the fundamental freedom of the press guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution, the commemoration of World Press Freedom Day this year put a number of concerns in perspective. Key amongst these being the long-lasting question as to when the Right to Information Bill will eventually become law. Another matter of concern is the continued attacks on media personnel. We shall be looking at Ghana's performance with regards to press freedom. We'll also turn our attention to the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Last week, we looked at developments coming out of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which had to do specifically with the naming of a nominee for the position of Deputy Special Prosecutor. This week, the office is in the news again, and this time Mr. Martin Amidou, the special prosecutor himself, seems to be prepping to take off in full flight, even as positions in that office continue to be filled. The special prosecutor, Mr. Martin Amidou, is reported to have acknowledged a petition filed in his office by the executive secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC, to interrogate and investigate alleged unlawful crude oil sale by the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company, BOST for short. We shall go into this development some more on the show this morning. So these are the topics we've outlined for today's conversations. We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, I will introduce to you the panelists for today's conversations. Stick and stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Newday, Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. Let me quickly introduce the panelists for today's conversations. On my left, we have Mr. Austin Game. He is a labor consultant. Next is Clara Berry Cassati, legal practitioner, also a lecturer at the Gimpa School of Law. And we also have Ms. Gary Nimakon. He is a lawyer as well and a senior member of the NPP communications team. Good morning, lady and gentlemen. It's good to have you on the show. Let me add that we're expecting a representative from the NDC to join us. When he joins us eventually, we will do the needful and introduce him accordingly, but we'll start off the conversations as it is, and we will start today's conversations with the Nation Builders Call launch. And the president on May 1st, that Labor Day, had this Nation Builders Call launched, and he advised or called the beneficiaries, as it were, or potential beneficiaries and stakeholders to take up this program, own it, and make something useful out of it. Today on the show, we shall be looking at this program, what it stands for, what it's likely to achieve, and how we intend to make it work better, perhaps comparable to other similar projects that have come in the past. So this Nation Builders Corps is expected to take off with training sessions on 1st July 2018 after successful registration of applicants throughout the month of May. Now, interested graduates are expected to visit the NAPCO website to register from now till 1st June, when the period for applications officially closes. Our applicants who make the cut will then proceed to begin work on 1st August 2018. It is open to graduates who have successfully completed diploma and degree programs at accredited tertiary institutions across the country, and it has 7 modules that will be available to potential beneficiaries or stakeholders at that. I'll start off with Mr. Austin Game here. Let's have your initial perspective or thinking of this launch and the program as it has been designed and, communicated to the citizenry.
Thank you. Most grateful. In reality, it's a very noble, kind of program brought by government. What is important to underline this is that some researchers have projected that by 2050, Sub-Saharan Africa will have a larger number of younger workforce than even China and India. That being the case, it means we must begin preparing now to ensure that we do not run out of steam by way of ensuring that our younger people who will be out of school will have opportunity to work. But we all know that it's not easy to expand without the expansion of the national economy. And because the function of the economy will definitely show the way forward as to how job creation, either by government as employer or private sector, would be. That being the case, this is a very, noble beginning, and we do hope. And the other point worth mentioning is that the president, in stating this, made it clear that this is virtually like a stopgap to give opportunity for the younger people to have a feel of world of work and to be able to move forward either into a private sector or wherever they may find opportunity.
Right.
So yes, that's just by way of introduction to
very,
that.
very well, that's fine. I'll move to Clara here. This program obviously isn't the first of its kind. We've seen the JIDAs, the NYEPs of the past, and these programs have gone, ultimately to the benefit of, if you like, some group of politicians. People would say corrupt politicians. And not just politicians, but even private individuals or entities have benefited from such schemes. People have described such schemes as perhaps create, loot, and share, because the ultimate beneficiaries don't even end up getting the benefits of such programs. So some people perhaps are legitimately critical when it comes to these projects or projects of this kind. So what, for instance, for you would be your concern moving forward to ensure that the experiences of the past do not play out with this one?
Okay. Thank you, Abna, and good morning to our viewers. It's a pleasure to be with you in your homes once more.
Yes.
Now, with respect to my view, just like Mr. Game said, I think it's a laudable initiative for the short term, as a short-term measure. Going forward long-term, I'm hoping that this won't end up being one of the fighting fires strategies that we've been adopting so far, because it is a good thing for us that we have a lot of people are an asset. So when we have people, it is only if we don't know how to manage the resource that it becomes a liability. So we have to learn how to manage it. For this, what I would want to see is that not just one of those things that, of course, we just come, we make the necessary talk, we turn into the necessary political foot soldiers or influential individuals making their bit out of it. But what I want to see is a comprehensive policy. And I want to see a comprehensive, deliberate national policy targeted at everybody. Committed in the sense that it looks at all facets. We are not just talking about unemployment. We have issues of unemployability. We have issues of the young people having difficulties, even if they want to be self-employed. We don't have too many people being self-employed. So I would want to see a comprehensive, deliberate policy that would be aimed at unemployment, unemployability, that is training them with skills and values and the necessary attitudes that they would need to survive in the labor market. And I would want to see the opportunities created for the youth to create and own their own businesses. And I think they can do it. Our youth, a lot of them are really talented. We have a lot of talent there. If we are not able to harness that talent, it's our fault. It's not their fault. We've been talking, look at, I'll cite an example. If you look at our history since the Fourth Republic, we've been very concerned about attracting foreign investment. So we enact laws, policies, and we make a deliberate effort to aiming at getting them in. What about our youth? Since the Fourth Republic, what deliberate policies have we been able to put in place to attract talent from the youth? Deliberate policies in such a way that wherever talent is, because of the structures we run, we will identify the talent. And I've always said that when you identify talent and you use it, everybody benefits. The entire community benefits from such talent. Cite an example, even, let's say, football. When I watch Messi, for example, I benefit because I enjoy the way he plays, the skill he demonstrates. So everybody benefits when we create talent. So I would want to see policies directed at the youth. Tax incentives, I would want to see tax incentives aimed at the youth. That if they engage in businesses, these are the incentives that they are going to get. I would want to see tax incentives aimed at people or businesses that assist the youth, so that they help the youth create the enabling environment. I would want to see faith in giving contracts and assistance to the youth, because we still have this attitude where it's like, okay, the youth have to wait their turn. We have to, the world is moving on. Right. We are not going to get very far with that kind of attitude. So yes, as a short-term measure. This is a laudable initiative, but I'm hoping that this won't just become one of those ones, but we would commit to making a deliberate national policy, very deliberate in the sense that all of us will galvanize behind it for our people.
Right. Now you talk about two things I'm picking from there. You talk about structures. You talk about the fact that, yes, certain incentives should be given to encourage. Exactly. So perhaps you're looking at beyond this 3 years of NAPCO. Exactly. But first, let's look at the structure. JIDA, for instance, suffered what it suffered. I mean, one of the reasons in the JIDA reports given or attributed to what happened was that it didn't have a legislative backing. Okay. And so perhaps it was left at the whims and caprices of people who were put in charge. Mm-hmm. So for instance, you didn't have provisions of governance funding to enable, you know, the program operate in within a certain framework that would ensure transparency and accountability. Mm-hmm. Again, looking at what happened in the past, of course, we need to learn lessons. Wouldn't it be prudent, for instance, for us to have a legislative backing to this? As it is now, we haven't heard of anything. Mm-hmm. Now you're talking structures. Wouldn't that help, for instance, beyond the policy which we're looking at? It would,
and not in addition to legislative backing. Even the values. I always say, even negotiating with the private sector. You have a lot of businesses who say we can't employ because we want A, B, C, D, which we're not getting. So we have to be able to bring all of them in together with the legislative backing in such a way that we can compel them that if you want A, B, C, D, you let us know. We have the pool. We can provide you the resources. If you have the necessary structures, we provide you the resources. Come train them. We have the force. So you come train them in the things you claim they don't have. And then after that, employ from that pool. And then at least we are on our way to solving some of the problems. As for come, let's give it, how many jobs can government create for the kind of, it's not sustainable. For the kind of labor force we have, how many jobs can government create? Right. So government will have to really work more at this rather than the firefighting. And yes, I think a legislative backing where we commit everybody, this would become one of the non-partisan situations because we realize that as a country we have a problem we need to deal with. So we all rally behind that kind of structure. We work hard at it, commitment, and I think we would all be it's doable. It's doable. It's doable.
Let's just get our act together. Now, Gary.
Yes.
Government explains that this program or scheme is targeting unemployed graduates, and it says this to show a distinction between this NAPCO and the YEA, for instance, which government says, or which is designed to target non-graduates. But there are people who are saying that perhaps looking at the modules under NAPCO and looking at the modules under YEA, there seems to be some similarities, so that perhaps instead of creating a whole new scheme, which would come with its attendant cost of operations and everything, because you definitely need a secretariat of some sort. You need some facility to have, people who will be running this scheme from. So overheads, you're looking at overheads, which will definitely bloat government's budgets when it comes to the sector, for instance. So perhaps why not an integration of the two? Because let me just quickly run you through. I looked up at the YEA modules and NAPCO. NAPCO has 7 modules, we're told. There's the Feed Ghana, there's the Heal Ghana, there's the Teach Ghana, there's Enterprise Ghana, there's Digitize Ghana, and there's one other thing I don't have here at the moment, but I'll just pull it up. When you look at YEA, there's Youth and Agriculture and Afforestation, and already Feed Ghana is ringing in my ears, which is under NAPCO. Youth and Community and Health Assistance, Heal Ghana under NAPCO. And then there's Community Teaching Assistance, and the NAPCO is Teach Ghana. You have YEA, there's Youth and Entrepreneurship, and there's Enterprise Ghana under NAPCO. So you do see some similarities or some synergies there. What do you say to those who are saying perhaps Abuna, we could have integrated to cut down on cost of operations?
Abuna, good morning. And good morning to also our esteemed Honorable Austin Game and also my own sister, Clara. It's been a long time since I saw her, so I was happy to see her this morning. Good morning to you as well. I see the people who are making these comments. I think they are comments that are all commendable comments, but there is no similarity in way of thought at all between this particular program and design and the National Youth Employment. Now, but let me ask you, can a non-graduate be employed under this scheme to go and engage in the work at Ghana Revenue Authority?
Not necessarily that. Let me just, so perhaps you're looking at the target, right, which is non-graduates versus graduates. But again, you could have an integrated system where these two streams of beneficiaries could be, you know, put together and, as it were, trained or given an opportunity to work. So that you don't, I think the concern really is, why create several levels of bureaucracies or, you know, cost lines when you could actually use, for instance, the governance system that we have under YE to overlook or oversee NAPCO. Otherwise, you're now going to have, if indeed we are to have a legislative back into this, then you're going to now look at issues about governance for NAPCO, funding arrangements for NAPCO, and all of that.
You see, Abna, for the target group for this scheme is graduates who are unemployed. I mean, we all know, and I think that basically the president also understands carefully that graduate unemployment is a national security risk.
Indeed it is.
Abna, in my office, I have over 300 CVs lying there. People are bringing CVs all over because they want employment. Now, some have been at home 3 years, 4 years, and they keep circulating CVs over and over and over and over again. Now, this scheme, for instance, the way I see it, is supposed to be more or less a stepping stone. Now, if you want employment, all employers are asking, bring us your qualification and job experience. Abena, the job experience, where do you get it? You get job experience on the job. But most employers demand that you must get job experience. Now, if this scheme, which has been now been brought by government, is supposed to be a stepping stone, a stopgap measure, a 3-year moratorium to help you put yourself in order, to give you training and skill, so that at least, assuming you had a training in revenue collection or mobilization, and you are put on a certain role that your work is to make sure you do revenue collection for even, let's say, property taxes, and you do for a period of 3 years, and they want permanent employer, workers for that sector, for GRA. Who do you think is much better place to be employed? The fresh graduate or the person who has had a skill and the experience as a result of being on the ground for 3 years? Now, I think that technically, the one who has got experience on the job is better placed to be employed on a permanent basis than the person who's a fresh graduate from school. And we all know, as a matter of fact, most employers demand work experience. And you see, sometimes it happens with this, travel arrangements. You want to go to America or whatever, they tell you don't have travel experience. Who should give you the better to go get travel experience? Somebody ought to start somewhere. Somebody must start you from somewhere. So, 100,000 graduates from our polytechnics and our universities who have been staying at home and who even form unemployed graduate association. For the first time in this country, we heard that group being formed, unemployed association of graduates. That's very disturbing. And you know, if for instance you have a youth who are unemployed and you are working the streets of this country, and you are a parent, you're taking your work to school, run through the academic sessions, from primary to JSS to university, some are even postgraduate students. They are still unemployed. So, to have them put under this scheme, Nation Builders Corps, 3 years, we train you, we put you, give you some skills, and then the skills will give you some employment on a permanent basis. I think that, Abuna, it is better to have something than nothing.
Very well. I think that is not in dispute. The fact that this is a good thing, I think the earlier speakers did say that, but I was looking at the synergies. But so I would want to throw that question to Mr. Game. But before that, let me quickly introduce Honorable Sam George. He is the Honorable Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram constituency. He joined us as the other panelists were speaking. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Morning.
Great. I'll come to you, but let me have Mr. Game address this. The issue about the seeming similarities or overlap. And this concern is coming because people are thinking, yes, government already has huge, responsibilities when it comes to paying for costs, issues and all of that. So why don't we run an efficient system to save, on costs, so that yes, there's the YEI, which is running certain modules targeted at non-graduates, but then there's this new one coming in targeted at graduates. Yes, there's that distinction, but couldn't we have integrated it into the YEI system as it is with some amendments or tweaks here and there, so that we save on operational costs, for instance?
Well, ideally, that would have been okay, but I think that just the sheer numbers of the people, because it's already stated by the president himself that about 80,000 people will be employed who are non-graduates as well. Just the sheer numbers of the 80,000, the 100,000 for the graduates and diplomates may create some structural problem as to how to managing people is a very difficult kind of thing. And so I think that we should be able to tolerate that for a season to see how this progressed. As they move on, we will see whether it would have been ideal or feasible having them put together. But I think just the sheer numbers. I've been looking at it and turning it around. And I think that we should allow the separation for now to enable these people to register if we have the numbers as such. But the puzzling, is about the, I don't know whether we will have the numbers because if the 1 million jobs that have been created already is anything to go by, even America, every quarter, they register close to 200 and something to 300 maximum. 1,000 jobs. And we have to agree and appreciate the fact that when they say jobs are being created, even in America, first quarter, it's certainly not a permanent job in all situations. Because by ILO definition, 1 hour working is even work as well. And therefore, it could be a piece work, it could be a temporary job, it could be a contract job, it could be, and indeed everybody is on contract in one way or the other, and therefore, I think that for now, we can tolerate the separation, as it were, and let's see how it progresses as we journey into the future to see how it will help the nation.
Very well. Mr. George, so quickly, now this launch coming after the finance minister made the first, introduction, as it were, of this during his 2018 budget speech, over like when he was reading the 2018 budget in Parliament. We have it launched now, and some would say, well, it's going towards the fulfillment of a campaign promise. And indeed, looking at the 2016 elections or the periods leading up to the 2016 elections, job creation was high on the agenda of political parties with so many promises. Would you say that this is commendable, coming in about 16 months of this government in office?
Well, let me say a very good morning to yourself and my co-panelists and our viewers across the world. Any move by any government whatsoever that is going to seek to alleviate both graduate and non-graduate unemployment is a welcome move. It's a move that we will all embrace, so long as Ghanaians are going to get jobs to do. I mean, it's not, I don't think any politician worth his salt would want to poo-poo any move that seeks to create jobs for the Ghanaian people, because that's what we've chosen to serve to do, to create a better condition of living for people. So if people are unemployed and there's going to be an opportunity for them to get jobs, why not? We would all welcome it. However, you want to look at the sustainability of such programs to ensure that such programs are sustainable. We have a history as a country, starting from 2006, where we had what you call stopgap measures or knee-jerk reactions to fixing the unemployment problems. I mean, there was a national security report under President Kufuor in 2006 that put unemployment as one of the greatest risks to the government. And I mean, it was an apt report, because you've seen in other jurisdictions, like what led to the Arab Spring was all about unemployment. And President Kufuor started a National Youth Employment Program, the NYEP. You saw it move to JIDA under Professor Mills. You saw it migrate into YEA with a legislation now to back it and all of that. You would have expected that as a country, we'll keep building and strengthening the institutions, because I believe that the YEA was an improvement on JIDA with all of the challenges JIDA had, and NYEP with its lack of institutional framework. You'd have expected that if the President Akufo-Addo wanted to build on it, we should have strengthened the YEA. And I mean, the discussion about graduates or non-graduates, and there's nothing that stops us from having graduate employment under the Youth Employment Authority. But to set up a whole new bureaucracy, we all know we are complaining already about the bureaucracy of the public service or the civil service, and to create a new bureaucracy again, for me, it just doesn't raise government's cost, but it actually defeats the purpose of an effective governance system. Again, you ask yourself that after 3 years, what is the sustainability of these jobs? People are employed for 3 years. It's a stopgap measure. It takes us beyond the next elections. Then what? What happens to those people?
That's what the YEA is for. It's also for a certain fixed term.
And that's why I'm saying that, can't we now begin to look at more long-term jobs? So I'd have loved it if this government had taken the YEA, which gave people, I think, a 2-year window. This is 3 years. You want to extend it by 1 year. How do we institutionalize that in YEA? How do we make it more long-term, so that as a nation, the next government after this will also build on it?
Can the government sustain such a long-term program?
If we can't, then we shouldn't even get involved in the first place.
So that's why it's an interim measure. Hopefully, you transition
you keep doing interim measures. So then it means that, okay, you come out and say that I've employed 180,000 people, and then 3 years later you dump them back onto the unemployment scheme. So it means we're going around in circles. As I believe that as politicians, we must begin to think at fixing the problems and not just managing the problems. Again, with this group of people who've been employed, I mean, and especially with the graduates, I don't even want to go into the politics or the discussion of whether the 700 cedis is enough or not. I mean, it's a payment.
It's a start.
It's a start for something. So I won't even go into that. I mean, some of us started life on less. Okay. But the question for me is, how are we classifying these people? Are we classifying them as workers, properly so-called? Are they protected under our labor laws? Can they go to the Labor Commission if they feel that their rights as workers, public service workers, are being infringed? That's something we are not clear about. Okay.
What does the Youth Employment Agency Act, as it is currently implementing?
It takes into cognizance the labor laws.
And it provides for SNIT.
And it provides for SNIT deductions. But under this one, there are no SNIT contributions. They are not making contributions to SNIT. And so once you're not making contributions to SNIT, you're also not covered under by the Labor Acts of Ghana. So you say you want to give people an experience of real work experience. Real work experience, you must contribute to SNIT. You don't train somebody by telling the person, I'm giving you a job, this is how the work world feels like, and that person in the real world work will pay SNIT contributions from their salary. You're not taking SNIT contributions. They're not protected by the labor laws and all of that. Those are very vital issues we need to look at. Again, for me, I won't look at the quantum. I'm going to look at the regularity of the pay. What we know is that government has not found or ring-fenced any new funding for the NABCO, the National Builders Corps.
Nation Builders.
Nation Builders Corps. What government is actually saying is that it's going to provide for the funding from the District Assembly's Common Fund. In fact, the administrator of the District Assembly's Common Fund has met with MPs and DCs and MCs and said to them that there's now a new formula for the utilization of the District Assembly's Common Fund. 40% is going to go into school feeding, 20% is going to go into the NABCO, 20% is going to go to planting for food and jobs, and 20% to cover administrative charges. Basically saying that our district assemblies and municipal assemblies are going to put a freeze on infrastructure projects because they don't have any allocation again for infrastructure projects. Now, that in itself presents its own challenges because many of these district assemblies provide the key basic infrastructural needs of people in these rural areas: boreholes, places of convenience, toilets, schools, CHIPS compounds. We're putting a freeze on all of that in our district assemblies, and now we're saying that.
And these district assemblies, municipal assemblies, and all supposed to generate revenue themselves.
I sit on the Public Accounts Committee, and from next week,
to complement whatever.
From next week, we're going to be in Ho to do the coastal belt. When you take the District Assembly Common Funds report on the IGF from district assemblies, you realize that it is unrealistic to demand, because the truth of the matter is, even in one of the most effective or the biggest metropolitan assembly, AMA, how many people in AMA pay property rates? How many of the houses pay property rates? That's the issue. You understand me? So when you're talking about internally generated funds, and if you're talking about, if you're talking, if you're talking,
if you're talking component revenue Ghana.
If you're talking, and take for example, and the response to that, when I said the district assemblies create basic infrastructural needs like KVIPs, like CHIPS compounds, boreholes. In the areas where you need this infrastructure, most of the houses there are mad houses. So you have a nation builder score that is going to go to a mad house, someone who can't even afford to put a toilet in his house. You are going to charge that person a property rate on a mad house. We must be realistic about the issues on the ground. When you go to some of these very deprived communities, the district assemblies there struggle. In fact, most of the district assemblies, you know how they generate in the rural areas? They generate revenue from cattle.
They just don't come from property rates.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you an example that most of them, if you go to some of these communities, they don't even have markets, because the district assemblies have not been able to build markets.
So then the question comes back to, I mean, not to divert, but it comes back to how and why we even create districts and enhance some status to municipal and metropolitan, which has always been a problem, that certain districts are created for political expediency. And
I won't dispute that.
Because, exactly, so this is clearly, because I don't understand why it is that a district, for instance, wouldn't have a market.
I mean, you don't need to go very far away. I can use my district, Ningo Pram Pram. Everybody thinks it's Greater Accra. We don't have any market in the whole district,
but that's fine. So now,
you understand me? So, I mean, these are real challenges that you face. And this is even in Greater Accra. So you can imagine when you go outside of Accra, the real challenges that the districts face with revenue generation. And that's what I'm saying, that when you take away that and you place NABCO in that bracket and say you're going to pay the beneficiaries of NABCO from the District Assembly's Common Fund, as we speak, the last Common Fund payment that has come in was for the third quarter of 2017. We've not received the final quarter. So we've received payments up to September 2017. So when you put people on NABCO and they're supposed to be paid monthly, how do they get paid monthly? They're going to be, right now we're entering this is April, so we're in the second quarter second quarter of 2018. So it means that effectively we are 2 quarters and we've entered the third quarter in arrears. So how then are we going to be?
Which has always been the case.
Absolutely. So that's why I have a problem with placing the payments of the beneficiaries in under a funding source that is always at least 8 months or 9 months behind schedule. So are we going to be owing our NABCO beneficiaries for 9 months?
Very well. Let me quickly come to Clara for your thoughts on this. This issue about sustainability. Definitely a key issue, because yes, so you have people on here, you need to be paying them, but we do know that, you know, statutory payments are always delayed. I mean, for so long. You're looking at, for instance, even NHIA. That's what's causing this whole mess with the system. Payments are never made on time. It takes forever to be made. You're going to have something similar happen here if we don't have a regular, you know, source of funding that is always coming through as and when we want it to be. So the question then is, government has to come in to intervene. but something has to give at some point.
Definitely. Before I answer that, I think there was something the Honorable Member of Parliament said about SNH contributions, that because there are no SNH contributions, they are not covered by the Labour Act. The Labour Act, that is not the case. Whether you are covered by the Labour Act or not is not dependent on whether you contribute to SNH or not, because the Labour Act recognizes different categories of workers, and depending on the category of worker you are, your employer may not be paying SNH on your behalf. So if you look at Section 1 of the Labour Act, it lists those who are not covered by the Labour Act. It doesn't include this kind of arrangement. I haven't seen the policy document, so unless there is something in the policy document to that effect, just the mere fact that they don't contribute to SNH wouldn't necessarily take them out of the Labour Act. Now, the sustainability aspect. As I said earlier on, this as a short-term measure, yes, but as a long-term measure, we have to. I think we have to. Like you said, something has to give. We have to, at this point, decide that, look here, we are tired of firefighting, and we know we can do better. We know this is doable, so let's stop the politics. Let's stop looking at opportunities where we can do this and then find ways maybe to give businesses to other people, where eventually, if you look at it, those who really benefit may not actually be the persons that we're employing, it's somebody else. So I think we all have to, at this point, decide that, look here, we are tired of this, that we are going to be very honest with ourselves, and we are going to be very committed to dealing with the problem in reality. So we should start dealing with the problem, and probably this should be the last attempt at firefighting, and then from here we'll talk about a comprehensive policy that will be sustainable.
Right. Quickly, Gary, maybe you would want to make some comments on what's been said not too long ago, but I would also want a direct question, which is something the President said. I'm trying to locate exactly where I have it, but it was to the effect that this, like you're saying, is a stopgap measure. There'll be a point where, you know, it will be transitioned, but also it came out that various constituencies will have their share. Implicitly, I get the sense that then there's going to be some form of quota system. Now my question is, how will that quota system be determined? And how do we ensure that it's done in a way that, you know, it's beneficial to
Before I answer your question, let me first of all say that the Nation Builders Score is a voluntary application. Nobody is being compelled that, as a matter of course, you must necessarily be enrolled on Nation Builders Score. Nobody is saying that.
But I'm sure it will be oversubscribed.
Well, I mean, if it is so, that is hallelujah. Because let's not forget, as it stands now, there's a freeze on public sector employment because of the IMF policy, which our brothers took us through. Now, unless somebody dies,
which is raising further questions.
Unless somebody dies in the public service, or somebody retires, or somebody resigns, or whatever the situation might be, you cannot put another person in the system. Now, you see, the way it is now, how then do we, government being the largest employer, how then do we put people in the system? It's not possible. So in the interim, 3 years, we are not saying that everybody, whether you like or you don't like, by force, come to Nation Builders Score. No.
But on the IMF issue you brought in quickly, one of the objectives of this program, the IMF program, is to help government deal with the deficit. I mean, cut down on expenditure, increase revenue, and all those technical issues, if you like. But with the NAPCO coming in, definitely, government's expenditure is going to go up.
No, not at all.
How is that?
Because the people are going to put to use. They are going to work.
Definitely, but you still are going to invest in them.
Exactly.
It comes with money, which would mean a corresponding increase.
But the expectation is that what they are going to do is going to bring in a reasonable returns. Because, for instance, if you put people on revenue, generation, and they are bringing you revenue, and you are paying them 700 Ghana cedis per calendar month, I don't think that if they give you, for instance, 2,000 and you give them 700 Ghana cedis, you can say that, well, what they are doing is not enough to be paid 700 Ghana cedis.
We are looking at a period of training. They need to go through a certain process of training before they become skilled at what they're supposed to do.
These are graduates.
They're graduates, but not necessarily trained in certain areas
very well,
that the modules are looking at.
Yeah, but these are graduates. See, these are graduates. See, our graduates are very intelligent. Let's not forget about that fact. They've gone through university education. You see, most of the time you realize that the fact the person is a graduate, a little training can prepare the person to do exactly what you want the person to do for you. So I don't think that there will be so much money to be invested in terms of training for the specifics that they are going to put in. And they are telling you, employ to where you think you can do. For instance, if you went through University of Professional Studies, you did some accounting, and then you come to revenue, you need more training to be put in that field. I don't think so. If, for instance, you went through University of Ghana, you did political science and other things, and you think that you are better placed, maybe a local government area. Because you see, it is not a new bureaucracy. That's why you should correct that point. It's not a new bureaucracy. No, the bureaucracy is there already. The bureaucracy is there already. The Ghana Revenue Authority is there already. You're not creating a new Ghana Revenue Authority. No. You are rather taking on additional force to help you because you cannot employ new skills. You are taking additional force to help you prosecute your mandate. So it's not as if the NYEP, where we have to create an entire new bureaucracy from the beginning, National Youth Employment. That's not how this one is going to work. This is an entirely different scheme and model altogether. So, for instance, those who are going to put a feed Ghana, Agric Ministry is there already. You don't need any Agric Ministry. You see, that is how it's going to work. So,
but the bureaucracy is in the management of the program, not the people necessarily, because yes, those systems are already there, but you're looking at the management of NAPCO. How is NAPCO going to
there's a coordinator in charge,
and that brings
in charge of that management. There's a coordinator in charge of that.
There'll definitely be a secretariat, wouldn't there?
Well, obviously there has to be, but you are supposed to now, take the applications, screen the applications, put them at the relevant places that they are seeking to apply for. That is not much to do. You see, so I don't think this one is the NYEP where it's an entirely fresh start structure. I don't think that is how it's going to be. So let us kickstart. We didn't have this before. Our graduates have stayed in the house, forming unemployed graduate association and youth, whatever you call it. Let's start this one, and then let's see how it works out. Let the person go home and come back at least to get up and say, well, look, I'm going to work. Sometimes the fact of even dressing up to say I'm going to work, it takes some pressure and some stress off your body. So while the person is going to work, and even if there's another opportunity in a different employment as a result of even being here for 1 year work experience or 2 year work experience, somebody say, well, I need, I think, an accountant in my firm. And you say you have an experience 2 years here and you have a degree here, you stand a chance of being employed because you have got a work experience. So let us not throw the entire program away as if
I don't think anybody's throwing the entire program
away,
Gary. Seriously, around the table, everyone has commended this. It's just we're interrogating certain issues which are legitimate. We will need to take a break here. When we come back,
I agree with you. And I think we will accept every criticism which we think is beneficial to the interest of the people of Ghana and the youth of the country.
That's fine. When we come back, we will wrap up on this conversation. We will go into the claims about the creation of over 1 million jobs in the formal sector between January 2017 and March 2018. And then I think my question about the quota system, which I hear from the president's speech, hasn't been answered. I will see if Mr. Austin Game can help us understand that. You're watching Newday Saturday Edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Newday Saturday Edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and streaming online around the world at 3news.com. We'll be wrapping up on the conversation about the NAPCO and the claims by government that it has been able to create over 1 million jobs between January 2017 and March 2018. Mr. Austin Game is here. He's the labor consultant. A wealth of knowledge when it comes to these issues. Now let us understand, what do you make of this claim by government having created over 1 million jobs between January 2017 and March 2018? We have a sound bite we would want to listen to, and then we'll come back to Mr. Game.
The urgency to create jobs for the teeming graduates has become paramount, considering the fact that less than 10% of graduates that find jobs after their national service. according to a study conducted by the Institute of Statistical, Social, and Economic Research. The emergence of NAPCO, therefore, cannot be more timely and accurate as it addresses the frustration, confusion, lack of hope, and direction for our youth. Therefore, your intervention is more apt and appropriate. The good news is that your government has made significant strides in addressing unemployment situation in Ghana. Between January 2017 and March 2018, Mr. President, your government has facilitated the creation of 1,096,404 jobs in both the public and private sectors through various interventions. And this happened within the formal economy. So what happened within the informal economy is not even accounted for here. I want to believe that if there is any single intervention which addresses the school to work transition in our country, we can't have any better program than NAPCO.
Great, so that was the Minister for Labour Relations and Employment, Mr. Ignatius Bafo, there at the launch of NAPCO, and talking about the fact that government had, as I said earlier, between January 2017 and March this year, created about 1,096,404 jobs. Now, the breakdown shows that 745,000 are coming from the Planting Food and Jobs program, and this has been subjected to a whole lot of scrutiny. As I said, I'll turn to Mr. Austin Game here for his perspective on this, and then we shall, try to deal with the fine details of this within the limited time that we have. But I believe you wanted to make some intervention or response to the fact about the Labour Act.
Thank you. Once I'm here, if I don't say anything about this business about the Labour Act and the pension aspect of it, when I get out from here, I'll be questioned. I think that aside the police service, the armed forces, the security and intelligence agencies, everybody, including Makola people, are covered by this Labour Act. That's number one. So the NAPCO people will also be covered by the Labour Act as well. And it's also important to note that if you are barely on the national daily minimum wage, then perhaps you'll be exempted up to a point from paying tax. And so if they are enacting the income tax, and indeed the 700 Ghana cedis should by now, as of today, be above the national daily minimum wage. And we should be able to introduce our young ones immediately to the knowledge that when you earn an income over and above that threshold, then you must pay tax. And on top of it, it is very critical and it's important to note that they have to pay Social Security. This is a must under the pension scheme. They have to pay Social Security. They have to, and it's very important that we introduce them to all these things once and for all.
Right.
Now, regarding this business about formal sector creation of job, indeed, I think that if we have that number really in place, it means we don't have we have no problem about
we fix the unemployment problem.
We don't have unemployment problem in this country. In America, they create about 200 and something thousand jobs every quarter. And so they projected that by 2026, they would have been creating about 11.something million jobs. So here in Ghana, if it is true, from January to 2017 to this time, March 2018, we've created over 1 million formal sector job employment. Then the media, you have a job to do. We don't need to debate this issue. Take your camera, go to Ghana Ports and Harbors Authority, find out whether it is true that they have those people there. If they are there, then it means what he's saying is true. If you go to Planting for Food and Jobs, and the people are located, because they must have a place where they are located, And so we don't need to debate this issue.
But I think, sorry to cut you, Mr. Game, I think essentially when such numbers are thrown out, some concerns are that what kind of jobs are you looking at? Is it a permanent job, or is it just, you know, a temporary job? And if it's a temporary job, why do we seem to be, you know, making such a fuss about it? Because at the end of a certain period, this person goes out of job anyways and then is unemployed.
Look, from a purely professional point of view, if you hear that they've created 200 and something thousand jobs in the U.S., they are all not permanent jobs. This silos business of people have a fixated mind that every job in Ghana must be a permanent job is quite unacceptable. You can be casual, you are gainfully employed. In fact, ILO definition for this is 1 hour. If you work for 1 hour, you are employed. Yes. So this fixated thing in Ghana here about everybody must be permanent is not true. You can be a contract worker. You can be a temporary worker. Indeed, in the labor law, let me be very open to you. Why we fixed in the Labor Act that you can have a temporary job is because, let's say you are permanently employed here to be in charge of this kind of role. If you proceed on leave or steady leave or some kind of long 3 months or so leave, that person, Clara, will be brought here to work in your stead for that 1 month or 3 months. She's working temporary. That is what is intended, and the definition is very clear in the Labor Act. We are abusing it as a people, which we must revert. So my point of view here is this. If the minister is saying that we have created over 1 million jobs, it could be that some people have even hesitated.
They're out of jobs again.
They're out of job from that period because your job, the job that you did at that time may be temporary, may be in the formal sector, but you were relieving some people. It may be a contract which may last for 1 year. It may be a contract which may last for 6 months. It's all job.
But then the question then that will come would be, when government or political parties are campaigning that the job creation, are they looking at temporary jobs, or they're giving the impression that it's going to be permanent jobs?
I'm not too sure whether they are talking about permanent jobs. Because if we want to come by the definition of the International Labour Organization, if you work for 1 hour, you have worked. There are, in our labor law, you can work for temporary, you can work on piece work, planting for food and jobs. The point is that it's seasonal. A planting period, harvesting period, nobody will keep you like that unless it's like VegPro, where you are producing something for export, and whereas the thing is not going to be available to be harvested for the 6 weeks that you'll be waiting, you'll still be there to be doing something else.
So question is, how does this help with the unemployment rate then? Because you can only be employed for a certain period, and it goes. So after three months or 6 months, you don't have it anymore. You come back into the unemployed category. How does that help?
Well, it does help as a stopgap. Always is a stopgap. Like I said, in America today, if you are in a construction business and you are employed to build a particular road or house, it will end one day somewhere along the line because you can't continue constructing that road forever.
So in other words, to sustain jobs, you need to have regular need for such.
If you're talking about sustainability, then you are working until retirement. In fact, you may even die along the line. You have stopped working. So clearly, the point here is that it may not be a job that is continuously available. If it's a continuous job available, like SNIT, if it's SNIT employ temporary workers, GRA will employ temporary people to collect some decent. In fact, TV3 may employ some people temporary because they have a program to ensure that they run a particular, course for some people, as the case may be. And so during that period, they may beef up the staff that they have. If you take the public service, there is a definite manpower hearing, complete manpower hearing, where we have a ceiling. We don't need the IMF to tell us what everybody else is saying. So sometimes it's annoying. We have a manpower hearing. So the manpower has a ceiling that you can only get X number of people into Ministry A or Department A, this manpower ceiling, you cannot go over it. If you should go over and above it, you are bloating the system and therefore refueling inflation.
Right.
That's how it is.
Very well. Quickly, Clara, you had a reaction earlier on to make.
Yes, I was actually, when Gary talked about the training aspect and the fact that our youth, our graduates are already intelligent and they can be employed straight away. It is true that our graduates are very intelligent, but if we say they can be employed straight away, it means we are not listening to industry. Because industry has been talking about unemployability. They've had concerns that sometimes they employ the graduates and the particular skills, because working is not just about intelligence, it's also about certain attitudes and certain values. It's a complex situation. So it would be great if we are not just looking at employment, just filling them in positions, but we are also looking at training. And training here is to address specific needs, particularly needs of industry, so that at least even we are in a position to tell industry that, okay, these are your concerns. We've addressed your concerns. Here, we've trained them. Even if you want, you can partner us in training them the way you think you want them to fit in your industry. That is how we would be able to address the unemployability, because we can't force any private sector, for example, to employ anybody. So we have to listen to the concerns of industry when it comes to the skills related. With respect to the sustainability, as we all agreed, and as Mr. Game has already said, this is a stopgap measure. I'm hoping that by the end of the 3 years, we have a plan ready. That at the end of the 3 years, we are not even waiting. We've started right now looking at the long-term solution to the problem, and that by the end of the 3 years, we will actually start implementing the long-term solution before the end of the 3 years. So that by the end of the 3 years, we have a comprehensive policy in place that addresses this problem once and for all, and we are not just going to wait. With respect to some of the payments, because I don't know the particular, I haven't seen the policy documents, it's difficult to be able to comment on the nature of the obligations and because I haven't seen the policy document. But I think at the end of the day, this is a great stopgap measure, but we should be more interested in where do we go from here? What next after the 3 years? That's no longer a firefighting, another firefighting.
Exactly, we can continue firefighting. Yes, Mr. Samjorch,
yes. You see,
over 1 million jobs created.
I just want to make a point on NAPCO. When we speak about the bureaucracy of NAPCO that is being created, which Gary seemed not to get, it's not necessarily about the people being employed. It's about the systems that are going to manage the people being employed. It's a duplication of bureaucracy. You had the Youth Employment Authority that could have been used to oversee. In fact, the Youth Employment Authority has a model for graduates already. It's called Youth and Paid Internship. So if you wanted to employ 100,000 graduates, you could actually have put them under there. And then Gary made a point that this is voluntary. Every job in Ghana, apart from the National Service Scheme, is voluntary. It's only the National Service Scheme that is mandatory for all people who have gone. Every other job, even your job here at TV3, is voluntary. So, so that is neither here nor there. But coming to the issue of the 1 million jobs created,
quickly
over 1 million
move on
jobs.
To clock sag,
Yeah. Give me again the figure that the minister said was created under Planting for Food and Jobs.
For Planting Food and Jobs, there's 745,000, so which is the major chunk of this figure, 1,096,404.
Let me state on authority that the minister has told an untruth, and that under the Planting for Food and Jobs, this government has employed only 3,230 people. And I'll give you evidence to buttress that. But before I go there, let's even take the World Population Review of 2018, which puts Ghana's working population at 12 million Ghanaians. In the State of the Nation's Address 2018 by His Excellency President Akufo-Addo, he put Ghana's unemployment rate at 5.7%. So if you take 5.7% of 12 million Ghanaians, that's 684,000 unemployed people. So if the minister's claims that they created 1 million jobs, it means we should have in excess of 300,000 jobs that are sitting there. So again, you see the disconnect between the figures that are being put out by both the president and the minister in terms of reality, because the president says 5.7% of Ghanaians are unemployed. Even in the minister's own speech in Kumasi, he made reference to the labor force survey of 2015. That labor force survey puts Ghana's total unemployment rate, or unemployed people, at 1,250,913 people. So it then means that if you had created 1 million jobs, we've effectively wiped out unemployment in Ghana. Now, let me give you the reason why I said the minister told an untruth when he said that he has created, this government has created 745,000 people. I'm going to be referencing jobs, yeah. I'm going to be referencing the 2018 budget statement as presented to the Parliament of Ghana by the Minister for Finance, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta. Page 78, paragraph 388, paragraph 388 on page 78, it says, and it starts from paragraph 387, which is Food Security and Emergency Preparedness Program, and that's talking about the Planting for Food and Jobs. Paragraph 388 says, as part of the program, and the program here is the Planting for Food and Jobs, 201,000 farmers were registered across the country, 2,160 university graduates and 1,070 youth were recruited. And then the rest, it goes on to talk about metric tons of fertilizer distributed and all. The farmers who were registered were already farmers who were already having their farms and engaged in farming. The Planting for Food and Jobs only sought to get the district assemblies and municipal assemblies to register these farmers who already had jobs, to make them beneficiaries of subsidized fertilizer that the ministry was bringing. So those are not jobs you've created.
Yes, but the breakdown of the 745 does not include the farmers.
Fantastic.
So that is out.
Now, if you take the budget statement, the budget statement mentions, paragraph 388, mentions those who were recruited. It says 2,160 university graduates and 1,070 youth were recruited. That's the finance minister speaking. He is the one who approves payment. And this is the budget of the Republic of Ghana, as presented by this same government. So if you add 2,160 and 1,070, that's 3,230. I don't see how this figure is anywhere close to 745,000 that were recruited under the Planting for Food and Jobs. So clearly, you realize that there has been some amount of misrepresentation that has been made to the Ghanaian people.
Well, I mean, these are verifiable figures, really. So,
and that's why I'm quoting the budget. And I've stated paragraph 388 on page 78 of the budget. If the minister wants to dispute it, this is what the finance minister presented to us.
I mean, we needed to wrap up on this, but given your intervention here, I'd quickly go to Gary for your reaction, because there's GAU, and then there's the Peasant Farmers Association. They have also had reason to, you know, as it were, question these figures coming out from the Planting for Food and Jobs, 745,000.
Abra, you heard the minister's statement very well. He said, and let me quote, with your permission, that the ministry has facilitated the creation of these employments in public and private sectors. Public and private sectors. You facilitate the creation. Are you getting my point? Now, assuming, for instance, we need people at the agri department and the ministry facilitates this employment, they will capture it as part of their record. Assuming we need people at finance and they facilitate that employment, they'll capture it as part of the people that they have given them employment. Assuming we need people at Roche, they'll capture it. Now, like my senior Honorable Osindame said, job creation, it could be permanent, it could be temporary. And I rightly also said, assuming you are given even a construction job for 6 months, it's job. It is job. Look, when we're living in the UK, and I will tell you, we did several jobs, and they were all captured, and we paid our tax on all those jobs. Now, assuming you move from one job to another job, it's also captured as part of your end-of-year tax returns, and you must capture and pay. So when we say that, look, it is not true, it is not factual, the minister told untruth to Ghanaians, the question I ask, have you gone to the ground to verify the figures to come to a different conclusion as to whether the minister has peddled falsehood or otherwise? I don't think that if you haven't done that, it's proper and fair to say that the minister has peddled falsehood to Ghanaians. If you ask my brother, if he has gone to the ground,
to the budget statement, and
the budget statement is a budget of estimates. It's a budget of estimates.
This was in respect of what had happened in 2017, so that would have captured the actuals. But to be fair, perhaps the minister read this budget in November. Now, between November and March, quite a lot could have happened. You never know. So, given that we don't have, and I'm not to hold brief, I'm just raising issues and interrogating further. But at some point, we need to bring this conversation to an end and move on to clock start.
In the absence of my own very good brother, Sam George, honorable, who I so dearly love, not having gone to the ground to verify the figures, I think that it would be premature for me to say that the minister has paid the falsehood to the Ghanaians. Let him go to the ground and come back to us next week on this show to say that he went to the ground and the people are there or they are not there, or the figures are not verifiable or they are verifiable. Then at that stage, we can now interrogate the matters better. But at this stage, what we have is what we have.
Very well.
And the fact
just a minute. No.
Of these figures.
Just a minute. No. See, we have to move on. And I'm going to allow Clara cast there. I mean, you have the casting vote to end this. So please go on.
For the data.
No, we go on and then we move on to clock time. No, just a minute, please.
Yes, on
Clara
the
is on the floor, please.
I think employment data should be credible.
Exactly.
We should have an independent body that sets up the figures clearly, so that we don't
leave
it to
political haggle over this.
Otherwise, if we leave it there, it's just going to be a matter
back and forth.
Back and forth. But we should have an independent body, even if it's we have the statistics.
Statistical service.
So, and even the data should be specific. So we don't make vague data and then leave it for people to argue left and right and all of that. The data should be credible. These kinds of jobs have been created here for this term. At least there should be some segregation that as independent people we can know what the facts are. If otherwise we are just going to do what's happening.
To here,
exactly, football.
And then there, and then Mr. Samdra, we will need to move on. I think that is fine. I mean, you've made your
bites in my close up, no problem.
You've made your point.
I'll take 30 seconds to address it.
As it's typical of you.
Absolutely.
That's fine. Anyways, we'll move on to CLOGSAG now. Now, CLOGSAG, that's a civil and local government service association, staff association of Ghana. We will take a listen to them as they complained about the fact that their jobs are being taken over by government special assistants. And then we'll come back to the panelists to interrogate exactly what is happening to the civil service of Ghana, the civil service that plays a key, or supposed to play a key role in our governance structure. Let's take a listen and then we'll come back.
The Executive Secretary of the Civil and Local Government Association, Ghana, CLOGSAG, Isaac Bampoado, cited the Ministries of Finance and Fisheries and other allied agencies where civil servants have been transferred to pave way for special assistants to take over their positions.
The affected ministers should be called to order, especially the Minister of Finance, who has recruited staff outside the civil service to head various divisions or departments within the Ministry of Finance. We cited issues from Ministry of Trade, from Fisheries, Ministry of Fisheries, even Ministry of Gender. But it's widespread at Ministry of Finance.
In some cases, the Executive Secretary claimed that some of the civil servants have been sidelined by the ministers to allow special assistants to take over their work.
Special assistant. It's unthinkable. You know, now the dimensions which special assistants are going, they should stay clear of civil service positions.
Again, the association expressed concern about some ministers who are outsourcing most of government business in the service. He has therefore charged the President Akufo-Addo to step in immediately. In another development, the association insists it will not pay any fees imposed on them by managers of their second-tier pension scheme.
We at HEDGE, representing CLOGSAG members, we have refused to take any fees and even pay any fees to our service providers until MPRA approves the calculation of the net assets value.
Leadership of CLOGSAG has charged the National Pensions Regulatory Authority to resolve this growing dissatisfaction.
Okay, so that was the CLOGSAG press conference, I believe, where their concerns were put out there. I mean, we would be looking at this development, but perhaps we would need to situate it within the bigger context where we're looking at the civil service as an institution set up by an act of parliament to play a certain role. And currently, as we hear from them, they are under threat of some sort. They're being taken, or their jobs are being taken over by government special assistants. Mr. Game, I'll start with you. Like I said, the civil service has a role to play. There's an objective to setting up the civil service. and it's quite clear in the Civil Service Act. Of course, there's the new Local Government Service Act, which, you know, also talks about the local government service and all. So that's how come we have the CLOCSAG. Now, CLOCSAG is claiming that their jobs are being taken away from them. In other words, some people are doing what they are mandated by law to do, which for me screams an unlawful thing to be occurring. Yeah. So again, this unlawful act is leading to an increase in the government wage bill, which we are told is perhaps over 90% of the budget. When, I mean, revenue takes over 90% of our revenues, which is quite concerning. Your initial perspectives about this? The phenomenon where we have special assistants coming in to do.
Any Ghanaian at all should be worried about it. If it is verified to be true, Ghanaian should be worried. Indeed, I know the gentlemen in CLOCSAG there very well. They are people who are very careful, especially the crop of people you saw in the clip there. They are all people I think I know, because I've once upon a time been in the Ministry of Employment. I've dealt with them. They are not people who would like to come out and put pressure on government, because generally speaking, civil service and related public service people are people who want to provide some sort of service to government. They want to be loyal to government. They want to do their work. They are not problematic people per se. We have, over the years, given them cause to be worried, and therefore have become a little pushy by way of saying what you've just said. I think the manpower thing I've just told you, in the civil service in particular, and the public service in general, there is an HR policy that, you know, ensure that you don't go over and above the ceiling. If you do that, you are automatically injecting inflation into the system, if people don't know. And you'll be forced to use over 70-something% of the national income to pay just item one. And I can guarantee you, it will not lead this nation anywhere.
But isn't it also the case that this phenomenon of resorting to government special agents is coming about as a result of frustrations within the civil service? That is leading to, you know, there's a certain level of we need to get the job done. We're not getting it from the system, which is supposed to back us or support us. So let's do this. And I have, if you like, a narration of various governments that have had cause to, at some point in time, raise issue about. And if for purposes of this conversation, I would want to, you know, go through it. It goes back as far as Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, in his famous Dawn broadcast of 1961. Let me quote him. He says, and back then, it's interesting to know that back then, the civil service was even considered to be very good and described at some point as the best on the African continent. But even then, Dr. Nkrumah is quoted as saying, I'm quoting here, he says, it amazes me that up to the present, many civil servants do not realize that we are living in a revolutionary era. This Ghana has lost so much time serving colonial masters, cannot afford to be tied down to archaic, snail-pace methods of work which obstruct expeditious progress. Civil servants, therefore, must develop a new orientation, a sense of mission and urgency to enable them eliminate all tendencies towards red tapeism, bureaucracy, and waste. Civil servants must use their initiative to make the civil service an effective instrument in the rapid development of Ghana. And this is Osajifo back in 1961. Then you have the NLC government, which ruled Ghana from 1966 to 69, also deploying the tardiness of the civil service and its lack of a sense of urgency in the implementation. Now, Lieutenant General E.K. Kotoka, a key member of the NLC, complained that, I'm quoting, things don't go as expected in the civil service. Then you come down to Lieutenant General Okran, another member of the NLC, also complained that he says in his ministries, unlike the army, the line of authority was ill-defined and diffused, and civil servants often did not know who was responsible for what. Then again, you have PNDC government, which took over power in December 1981, also blaming the civil service for not only sabotaging its policies and foot dragging, but also regarded the top echelons of the service as allies of imperialism and colonialism. The former President Rawlings is also on record to have complained about the civil service in recent times. He says, we may have our political sympathies or allegiances, but that should not be allowed to override the logic and integrity of our input into government programs. So clearly, historically, you see that there's a certain level of frustrations with the civil service. Would you say then that this whole phenomenon that we are seeing is perhaps coming from this frustration? We need to get the job done because the civil service is there to help with formulation of government policies and implementation. So if you're not getting that support, then perhaps you need to resort to something else, even though it's unlawful. But that's what has come to stay.
Let me be very honest with you. I have been in private sector, I've been in public service, I've been in private sector back, and I'm on my own. I have workers also. I can tell you without any hesitation that the civil service, they are reasonably okay, but they cannot do everything the way the political office holders who have a mandate to complete a certain tenure and move on for another election. They cannot satisfy them totally. That's one. I have had an experience before in the ministry where we were to have a meeting with vice chancellors from the various universities, and letters that were sent out, apparently they posted the letters instead of delivering them as the case may be, because me, from where I came from, I would have gone to deliver them. And so the turnout, was that only 3 vice chancellors turned out. When I found out from their they had posted the letters at the ministry there, and the postal system. So I said, okay, sorry, I apologize for that. And I organized and sent the letters. Me and my driver, we went around and distributed the letters. The next time around, the place was jammed with all the vice chancellors and their people. And so I told them this is what the example I was trying to give them. So yes, you may have every village you have a Mensa there. So the reality is that you cannot lump the entire civil service into the same basket. There may be some bad notes in between. And then you can complain through the structures, and they may be able to resolve it or otherwise. And that's why in the Labor Act we provided, and they are also covered, we provided that we must train, retrain, and develop the skills of the people. And with these rapidly changing technologies, with the kind of computerization system, the high-level Excel functioning system that we have, you can use one person to generate 15 years information in 30 minutes. We need to just train them, and they'll respond to it. So my plea and suggestion strongly is that if it is a fact that this thing is ongoing, we need to stop it and use sparingly these people to provide some sort of consultancy services as and when it is very, very necessary. But to place them in this square, if they want to react, government will become a bit frustrated. So I think that's just my take.
Very well. I'll go to Mr. Sam George here. The civil service, again, as we know it to be, is an inheritance, if you like, from the colonial era. So we took on board this civil service with a certain expectation. It has performed at some points, and I was reading some work done by one of the renowned political scientists in Ghana, and he said, in his piece, talking about the fact that the civil service of Ghana has at various times been either described as the best on the continent, or that it's moribund, it's only foot dragging, not as effective as we expect it to be. So clearly there are times when it's been good and that's when it's not necessarily performed well. Now, looking at the literature also, you do realize that a number of reforms attempts have happened. You can talk of the Civil Service Reform Program between 1987 and 1983. There was also a Civil Service Improvement Program in 1995. There was even a ministry set up for public sector reforms, and the public sector includes the civil service, so you're talking about that. Yet, we still seem to have complaints. Is it the case that perhaps it's about time we tweaked the system we inherited somewhat to make it suit our purpose. Let's understand our sociology as a people and then work around that to remodel something good for us.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, if the civil service is there and you still have presidential aides, you're paying both sides, really. You're not getting value.
Absolutely. And let me just state for the record that I've been a civil servant before. I've worked in 2 civil service ministries before I got into active politics. So,
but you've not been a special assistant before, have you?
No.
Okay, so you've not experienced both worlds.
I have been a presidential staffer.
Okay.
So not a special assistant. But I promised to do something on the food planting for food and jobs.
Mr.
Paragraph
Santos, please,
389.
let's just,
in 2018, 500,000 farmers are targeted to be registered, while 2,700 extension agents are expected to be recruited. So only 2,700 will be recruited. So still the 747 or 45, we're looking for where that is going to come from. That's just for Gary, for him to ponder on. Now, back to your point on clock sack. Back to your point on clock sack. The civil service is a very vital tool for the function of any government. Extremely vital. No government can achieve its mandate without a civil service. It's impossible. Forget it. And that's why even when the military takes over and they suspend parliament, they don't suspend the civil service. However, I have always maintained that the civil service is a double-edged sword. And they also, even though they are an essential part of where we've gotten to as a country, our success story as a country, they are also an essential part of our failings as a country. Sure. Because look, there are civil servants who may have been assistant director 2Bs when Honorable Game was at the ministry, who are still in the civil service today, because maybe they were in the civil, they had just come in at 22, 23. 30 years on, they are still, right now, many of them may be deputy directors or full directors or chief directors. So you realize how many ministers have passed through them. They have institutional memory. And I'm aware of instances where ministers go to a ministry, political appointees, ministers go there, and the chief director or senior directors meet with him and tell him, this is how we do things here. And when a minister wants to change the status quo, exactly, when he wants to change the status quo a little, you can be set up or frustrated by the civil service. I've always asked the question, let's just take the Fourth Republican democracy. We've accused President Rawlings and his ministers of being corrupt. We've accused President Kufuor and his ministers of being corrupt. President Mills and his ministers of being corrupt. President Mahama and his ministers of being corrupt. We're accusing President Akufo-Addo and his ministers of being corrupt. Why, when you are appointed president or elected president and appointed minister, do they take you to a special room where they teach you how to get corrupt? No. So if there's corruption in the system, who have been the common denominator across all of these governments? The civil service. I'm not saying there are no fine civil servants. They're fantastic civil servants. However, there are real challenges with our civil service. The solution to this is not to usurp the role of the civil service, which is what you're beginning to see under this administration. If you listen to that
wait a minute. I think we should put things in perspective, because if we're looking at solving a problem, the phenomenon special assistant is not peculiar to this government only, is it? It's not. It
really came to the fore from 2001, actually.
So it's been there for some time.
Yes.
So I think we should situate it appropriately. And
it's been there. Take, for example, and I did this on another platform yesterday where I was on TV. I said, currently I'm a member of parliament. I'm supposed to have a research assistant. I don't have one. So I've employed someone who helps me with my research. If by God's grace, the NDC comes back to power in 2021, and Sam George happens to, by God's grace, find himself in a ministerial or deputy ministerial appointment, it would just be normal that my research assistant, who's worked with me for 4 years in Parliament, I will take him along because he understands some of my personal needs.
Why should it be normal?
That becomes my personal assistant, who is paid by me as I'm paying him in Parliament. He's my personal assistant. It's not wrong for a minister to go along with a personal secretary or a personal assistant. That nobody should have any issues with.
To be paid by who?
By himself.
Sure.
You pay them,
so not
paid by the state.
You don't burden the public purse.
It is not wrong, because I mean, take for example, Honorable Ostingame may have a personal secretary who understands how he wants his documents filed. If he goes to any public sector ministry today, he will go along with that person because that person will make his work efficient. However, that person will not replace the chief director or any of the line directors, the director PM, PPME, or anything in the ministry. What CLOSAG is complaining about is now no longer the appearance of special aides or personal assistants to ministers, but a situation where special assistants are being brought in at the taxpayers' expense, who are now taking over the line duties, the duties of line officers in the civil service. That is where the complaint is.
Which is what has been, has been persistent since 2001, like you said.
No, you see,
because we do hear in the, it's all around that special assistants, so we've been hearing this.
They have not come in to take the jobs. You see, this is the first time you're having CLOSAG. I haven't heard CLOSAG come out, even in 2000, from 2001 under President Kufuor. I haven't heard CLOSAG come out to tell government or give government an ultimatum that our jobs are being taken. Ministers have come in with their special assistants. But this time, the allegation is clear, and they're giving specific examples. They mentioned the Ministry for Gender and Social Protection, and then they said, but they'll zero in on the Ministry of Finance. Well, and you see, the Ministry of Finance is a career civil service ministry. It's not like all other ministries. There are specific ministries that are career. Ministry of Finance, Attorney General's Department, Roads and Highways. You have engineers there, you have finance people here, you have lawyers here. So they don't switch them across ministries. So you have someone who's been a director at the Ministry of Finance for 20 years, has risen through the ranks, gone through so much training. Then you have a minister come in and he decides to bring in a special aide from his private practice to come and usurp the role of a career a technocrat at the Ministry of Finance. You don't expect them to sit down and be happy about this. This cannot augur well for us. And the question you should ask yourself, are we running that minister's policy or are we running a national policy? What is the guarantee that that Minister for Finance will be there for even the full 4-year mandate of this government? So if a new minister comes under this government of finance, will he also now come in with a whole new plethora of special assistants? Where then lies in institutional memory? Because all of these special assistants will do what? Transition with that minister. So what you're doing, when people say let's institutionalize special assistants, let's allow people come in with their own breed of special assistants, then you will lose institutional memory. Because every time a minister transitions,
he goes with.
So take, for example, Honorable Kwabena Dufo was Minister for Finance under President Mills. He should have come in with people from Unibank to come and run the ministry. Then when he left and Setekwe came in, Seth should have brought in some of his colleagues from the IMF or the World Bank to come and run the place. Then today you are seeing people from Data Bank. No. When the next person comes in, what happens? Where is the institutional memory? And a key ministry that needs institutional memory is our Ministry for Finance. I'll take heat from Gary and drop my case. I rest my case.
Oh, Gary asked you to stop? Well, that happened behind me. I didn't see that, but that's fine. Let me come to Clara. So, the civil service. To say that they are critical to the run of government is an understatement. Yeah. It's no doubt. They are supposed to serve the government of the day. Yeah. They're supposed to be apolitical, independent. Their duty is just work for the government of the day. Make sure you help with formulation and implementation of policies. Okay. Now we have this phenomenon creeping in. And like I said, this is not necessarily peculiar to this government. We've had it over a certain period of time. Some would say that perhaps it has escalated to a certain level now, which is why CLOSAG is coming out with this complaint. That notwithstanding, there seems to be a problem, which is necessitating this kind of phenomenon. Because until something is relevant or remains relevant, there wouldn't be the need to, fill in or address it, which is what we are seeing here. How do we deal? And I talked about the fact that the civil service for so many years, there's been several attempts to reform it, but we seem to still have a certain problem with the service.
Okay. I think, like you said, we cannot say that there's no problem with the civil service, because if that was the case, we wouldn't have had issues right from independence, where political leaders have always raised issues. But like you said, we know that if the country is a human being, the civil service is the blood that runs in the veins of the human being. If the country is a car, the civil service is the engine. So no matter the problems that we have, one of the solutions to that problem cannot include sidestepping the civil service or ignoring the civil service or taking away their jobs, no matter what the problems are. That cannot be a solution. So we can't even begin to talk about that. That is no alternative. It's a no-no. That cannot be. This is a civil service that we have a role for in our country. We've invested in the persons who work in the civil service because we train them, we build their capacities. We've invested in them, and they do have expertise that they can benefit all of us. Yes, we admit that there are problems, but I'm reluctant to talk because similar to our general attitude, have we really taken our time to identify what the problem is and address it head on? Or it is the usual, we just talk about it, we just complain that there are problems. And I am pretty sure that by now there will be a lot of research data sitting everywhere else, identifying what the problems are, proposing what the solutions are, but as usual, we haven't bothered to look at those problems to address it as a nation. In short, I don't think there's any perfect civil service anywhere else in the world. But I think you can have a good public service that can work for the country. And I think that's what we should aim at. So like I said, if this is true, it is a no-no, it's not an alternative. It cannot even be on the table. What ought to be on the table is what we should always do that we don't do, which is a concerted effort, address it, let's have a national debate, I'm sure the research data is there, let's create the data in the first place, let's be sure exactly what the problem is. And if we know what exactly the problem is, then we can find ways to address them, even if we have to create, even in that, an opportunity that any time that we have any government come in place, you can let the civil service know that this is what we need from you, A, B, C, D, and then discuss how it can be delivered, and then work with the civil service. We have to work together. If we are going to get anywhere as a nation, every government that comes in cannot succeed, cannot do much without the civil service. So we can't even begin to have friction. We cannot even begin to make it look like we have a problem with the civil service, and then, no, that cannot even be on the table. What can be on the table is we have identified A, B, C, D that we think is hindering our progress, and then we find solutions to addressing those problems.
One of the issues that have come up in the past on civil service issues has to do with the fact that the civil service is becoming politicized, or perhaps is politicized, which is totally contrary to what it's supposed to be. And that perhaps is one of the reasons why we are struggling.
I believe that our laws provide for what should happen. So if it is true, again, either this is a rumor or it is true. If it is true, I don't see why we are complaining about it and not addressing it. If it is true that it's become partisan or politics, we have laws that deal with politics in civil service. Enforce the law. If we enforce the law and we find out that the law is still not securing for us the non-partisanship that we need, let's enact laws that addresses the problem. But we cannot use that to run away. We can't use any excuse to run away from letting the civil service do their work. The civil service must do their work. That's the only solution. So if they are not doing their work now, we need to identify what is hindering that and make sure that it happens, because there's no solution that would include sidestepping.
Right.
There is no solution.
That's a no-no.
That's a no-no.
They
There's
just
no
have to be
solution
there.
that
Institutional memory, we can't work with them.
Yeah.
Gary, you're drinking water. Gulping it. Now, your perspective on this.
Oh, Abna, I think the points have been well all said here. You know, basically, civil servants, like other public servants, they have a guaranteed term of office. And in fact, the Constitution guarantees that you cannot even dismiss them unless for just cause. You know, so yes, there have been instances where people have complained about the politicization of the civil service, that some of our civil servants align themselves to a political party A or B. So sometimes maybe it becomes difficult to work with them when a new government takes office. You know, but one may say, will that be enough justification for saying that the person has become political and therefore maybe possibly you are sidestepping them? It's another matter altogether. I think that if a civil servant involves himself in partisan politics, and that with a certain political party, obviously that person is not fit to be in a service. You know, you're not fit to be in a service. You know, because you cannot be a civil servant and then be doing partisan politics, like what me and Sam George are doing here. I told Sam George is my brother, and I've been telling you, you know, some of these things that the complaint is going on, if it is true, I'm going to go and verify. You give me time to go and verify these allegations, because until the what do you call the press conference came out, I have been totally been unaware that you know, some civil servants claim that their jobs have been taken over by special assistants. I'm not aware of that. But that notwithstanding, when they say the work has been taken away from them, is it the case that their tables have been taken from them, or the jobs are not assigned to them? I didn't get that thing very clear. Is it that the jobs that they do every day, those jobs are not assigned to them, or the tables that they sit on have been taken away from them? I think we need to also go into also verify some of all these claims. But at this stage, you have to give me time to go and find out whether the allegations that they are making are indeed true. If they are indeed true, then we have to address it.
Very well. Mr. Gama, you quickly wanted to react.
Before I take a bow for the political people to continue to have what they are doing. You see, if the law, our Labor Act is very clear that the employer is the only authorized person to, employ. In this case, government as employer. But there are rules and regulations that govern the process. And you can't sidestep that process. The Public Services Commission is the one that interviews and get the people to be employed by the head of the civil service and so forth and so on. And if there are complaints of non-performance, the head of the civil service and the Civil Service Council are there to step in. But like Gary was asking the question, Section 9 of the Labor Act talks about the duties of the employer. It says that if you employ people, then you, as the employer, you must A, provide work, appropriate raw materials, machinery, equipment, and tools. That is what the law enjoins the employer to do. It's not about, you must, which includes physical table, physical designations as to what you should be doing. And if that is what you are engaged in doing all this while, that's why you must further train and retrain under the same Section 9 and enhance, to enable them to enhance your productivity. And if you assign them targets, or KPIs to undertake the assignment for you, and they are not fulfilling that, the law gives you grounds as to where you should go next. But if you are not doing that, and we want to, have maybe one or two people to beef up your strength, you may have the liberty to do that, as has been the case all the time. But if you go beyond a certain acceptable level, it may create problem. And if the civil service want to be very difficult, where I have been doing a lot of my studies is in Japan. The civil service in Japan don't do this kind of thing. And they don't, the ministers who are coming in and going out do not replace them. You just have to stay with them. And they keep with the pace the way it is. And they don't get, everybody votes. Everybody in this world somewhere along the line that is voluntarily willing to vote, to go and vote. And in Japan, they also vote. But I tell you, they do their job. They don't care about whether it's CPP or KGB that is coming into power. They just go to work and do their job. And Ghanaian civil service, I have worked with many of them for about close to 6 years. They are just amazingly available for you. You just need to give them leadership. They'll do it for you. But there will always be problem also. Let's not run away from that. And the civil service themselves will allude to that there will always be problem. And they will have to find ways and means of solving it, as my sister also said.
But sidestepping them is not the way to go. We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we'll move on into other areas. But when we come back, Mr. Austin Game wouldn't be with us. We want to say thank you to him at this point for sharing his thoughts on these topics. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Newday Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're online streaming live around the world at 3news.com. also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So Mr. Austin Game left us, but in his place we have Mr. Duncan Amwa. He is Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC for short. He's joined us. You're welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Good morning.
A very good morning to you. So we have two topics to go. That is the World Press Freedom Day and then the Office of the Special Prosecutor being in the news this week, and the fact that the Special Prosecutor, Mr. Martin Amidu, is reported to have responded to a petition that was filed by COPEC to the Office of the Special Prosecutor in respect of some alleged unlawful crude oil sale by BOST. So we'll be taking that conversation first, and then we're veering into the World Press Freedom Day. Now, Duncan, start us off. So you petitioned the office even before it was, even before Mr. Martin Amidu was approved. Is that it, or just around the time he was approved?
It was after the approval.
Right. And so the office is still being set up, but then your petition is there, and he has found it necessary to respond to it. What do you make of that?
Well, indeed, to put it in proper perspective, we had, following from some publication by the Herald newspaper, decided to ask questions about the sale of crude. And so we had asked BOST equally to provide us with some information which never came, except to say that we saw their public statement in defense of the sale after the Herald newspaper had published the initial accusation that some financial malfeasance had been occasioned per that sale. We also set out to dig and to ask questions and to do our own investigations. Eventually, we come out with our report, and the report was three key things: instructive, that the crude had indeed been sold, that the crude was sold for lower than what the market was dictating at the time, and that there was some illegality also occasioned in respect of the fact that who we even sold to doesn't have any legal basis to trade in tank within the country. And so we put out our reports. BOST came back with all manner of defenses. What eventually happened was the public was left in the middle as to whether COPEC was telling the truth or BOST was indeed telling the truth. So we had to further the cause to ask for investigations to ascertain whether what we found is indeed all there is, or there is more to it, or there is nothing at all to it. So we wrote officially to the Office of the Special Prosecutor, invoking his jurisdiction and investigative powers into the matter. And we got a response from him last week detailing three things: that acknowledging the petition, two, also suggesting that he's still working on his office setup, or organizational setup, and that as soon as he is ready, he will want to delve or probe into the matter. And then the third one, which I think has made media headlines, is that we should get ready to provide him some further and better particulars. Some have construed that to mean evidence. What we know is that our facts are intact, and whatever documentation we have, we are willing to support him to go out and do his work. I can put on record that this might be one of the easiest investigations the learned Amidu will go into. Because these are the facts. We said they sold. They haven't denied they sold. So that is almost established. We said
you don't want to do your case in the media, do you?
No, I'm not. I'm just stating why some headlines suggesting to provide evidence might not exactly be what it is. What we have
now, from your perspective,
no, what we from the letter I have here, I'm sure you can share also with viewers.
Your co-panelists.
Yes, we have said three things which we are asking for investigations on. We said they have sold our crude. If you listen to BOST's defenses all over the place, it is admitted that they sold. So it is not in doubt or in contest. We said that if they had gone through the Public Asset Disposal Act, which enjoins persons seeking to dispose public assets to publish and allow persons to put in bids or interests. It is likely Ghana would have made much more from what we received. Then again, they say, well, they went to sell at -2. We think they could have gotten +5 safely. So that would also have to be investigated and settled. The third leg, which has to do with legality or otherwise, is something that we are not in no doubt in our minds that the company that Boss sold to, BB Energy, Boss went into that agreement in September. As of December 2017, BB was then asking the NPA for license. And so clearly, we believe that there's been some breaches, some violation that need to be also set
which
properly.
is why you petitioned.
Which is why
OSP.
we've asked him to get into the matter. And so we believe strongly that even if Duncan Amwa was to die today, there will be enough leads for the special prosecutor to do his work, except to also add that we are willing today, this morning, to meet with Mr. Martin Amidu anytime the office setup is completed. And whatever leads, whatever information, whatever pertinent, intelligence we may have that would aid in his investigation, we are willing to assist him to get to the bottom of this. And we are quite certain of 2 outcomes, all of which will benefit Ghanaians. That Mr. Amidu will probe the Boss, issues, not only the sale, but other issues that we also added to the petition, which we will not discuss anyway. We are certain that once he goes into them, 2 outcomes. Either he comes out to say, look, I have done a thorough job on Boss. I can tell you for a fact that they are going by all the laid down rules. In that instance, the taxi driver, the trotro driver, the average Ghanaian goes to bed knowing that the 9 million cedis we contribute monthly to Boss is being applied judiciously. If he comes out to say, look, there's been so many infractions, there's been so many breaches, right? Some people have occasioned financial losses here and there. We need to recover those monies.
Alleged,
I'm still sure. No, that's what I'm saying. 2 outcomes. There can't be a highway.
Right.
Either he affirms our position or he believes that everything has been done well and good. Either way, Ghanaians will be very good. Because if the second outcome says that there's been infractions, there's been financial losses, there's been corruption, there's been fraud, and he retrieves those monies, Ghanaians will still be happy. But we are saying that per our checks, right, we think that something untoward has been occasioned. And that is why we have invoked his jurisdiction to look into the matter, to bring closure, so that Ghanaians would know, was it COPEC telling the truth? Is Boss really doing all it's supposed to do and rightly? If it is, COPEC will go back a very happy institution, and Ghanaians will be even more happier knowing that things are being done the way they should.
Great, thank you for that. Clara, this response by the special prosecutor, clearly the office is still being set up, but he found it necessary to issue this. Some are seeing it as a bit out of place. Do you share that opinion?
No, I don't share that opinion. I think at least if a petition has been filed at your office, you must. It is the right thing to do is to acknowledge receipt and then probably communicate what steps you intend to take to the petitioner. So the response is in place. But as we said, we'll have to wait from the letter. He says that he's still setting up the office, and then the relevant department will deal with it. So we hope that happens. I'm sure the special prosecutor knows that he has the backing of the entire country. And that the goodwill is there. So we wait to see what happens.
Right. The expectations are high from this office. Definitely. And so people are just keeping an eye on the process to set up this office. Last week we discussed this. Now, last week we heard news about the nominee for the position of the deputy. And this person is supposed to be approved by Parliament. That would take some time when Parliament comes back, and a whole lot. We do know that there's a board that has to be constituted. There are other supporting staff that have to be appointed. Looking at the pace of filling in, what do you make of it? Do you think we are really hitting the ground running in terms of the setting up of this office?
It's difficult for me to say that because I'm not really privy to what has happened apart from the reports. But I believe that the special prosecutor himself would be in a better position to say. But like the truth is, we are all waiting eagerly. So we would want to really get information that everything is set now, and we want to see some action. Of course, we know why, because this issue of corruption has been, and it's something we've been grappling with, and we want to see how this is going to contribute to the fight against corruption. So yes, just like every other Ghanaian, I'm also eager to see that the office is set up and it's running. It's been quite some time. I was a little bit, to be honest, disappointed when you said that the office is still being set up. The expectation is that at least now the office will have
that's what Mr. Martin Amidu himself says. And it's still, even in the letter to COPEC, he does appreciate that he's writing this, but upon the completion of, you know, then things will take into effect in full flight.
Yes.
So clearly the office is still being set up. Gary, we want to see action.
That is so.
Is what Clara said.
Yeah,
and indeed,
so the appointment has been made.
The voices of many Ghanaians.
This is in full compliance of the campaign promise that will make government look transparent, you know. So, yes, Mr. Abidu has been appointed, deputy has been appointed. It's part of the process.
Deputy not appointed yet, named, but yet to be
appointed. Named. He has to go through the process, isn't it? Yeah, so it's a matter of time. I'm sure possibly by June, July, thereabout, we will see some.
That's a long time.
No,
you know, like
no.
that
you see some action. Now, I think that, you see, I'm not a lawyer for boast, but I think that to every case or to every story there are two sides. Mr. Duncan Amwa is a petitioner in the matter, as far as I'm concerned, in this letter. I don't see the respondent here to also respond to the contents of the letter. The letter simply says that his petition has been duly acknowledged and that they will ask him to bring further and better particulars.
And this was specifically addressed to the petitioner?
Yes, to him,
so, yes.
On the petition. You see, we don't have Bust also being here to also speak to, you know, the way Mr. Amwa said, well, they sold the thing at a lower price, they could have sold at a higher price.
That's why I kept on reminding him that that is his case.
You know,
so that's what
I don't want to go into the merits or demerits of his case, but just to make a point, just one point, that if, for instance, in a world market pricing, that's their business. Just one point. If a product maybe possibly could have been sold for $1, and it is sold for, let's say, 90 cents, does that necessarily make it a criminal conduct? I mean, you, Clara, you're a senior lawyer, and you know, if the thing can be sold possibly for $1, and then it's sold for 90 cents, can we say that that is a criminal conduct to be looked into?
Should I answer? It depends on a whole lot of things.
It is a matter that I think that
it's for
maybe to engage the attention of the special prosecutor in the conduct on the pursuit of his work. So at this stage, all I can say is that this government has made it very clear. And the government says that I'm going to make sure that corruption, it will be a disincentive in the country. That you don't come and serve my administration and then corrupt yourself, and at the end of the day, you know, before you are aware, you are rich overnight. That is the reason why the mandate of this office is very, very crucial. This office is going to prosecute members from our government and also members of the government of the past administration. So whether you are in or you are out, if you are found to be engaged in any corruptible thing, you will have to answer, because this is public money. So, well, it's an allegation at this stage. Once an allegation, you cannot assume that it is factual. You must now go there and then prove your case before the prosecutor.
This is what due process is all
about. And if at the end of the day you go there and they think that there is a merit in your case, then you can now begin to make charges and put before a law court for the court also to look into the allegations.
Exactly.
And then if the prosecutor comes to court and can make a case of corruption or whatever and prove his charges beyond reasonable doubt, that's a criminal standard, then obviously we can say that, well, something has come out of it.
No,
But at this
that point
stage,
is very important.
it
When
still
you're saying
remains.
it would have to be put before a court of competency.
Yes,
because
court.
I think some people are of the impression that, well, Mr. Amidu would do everything and then
not at all.
he is the investigator.
Yes,
He will go into
yes.
it.
Mr. Amidu is not a court.
Yes,
So he
he's
will
not a
just
court.
determine whether
It merits. Yes.
Exactly.
Even
It
whether
goes
it's
to-
merit,
yes.
he has to determine whether it falls within his mandate in the first place. If it falls within his mandate from his investigations, is there a course of action
Right.
before he now goes to
Exactly.
court?
Right.
Exactly.
So
those
at this stage,
processes-
it is too premature. It's too premature because I've seen crossfire and refire and crossfire in the media on this particular matter between Mr. Amwa and the embossed. And you see, I think this case has also arisen another cause of action by a civil what do you call it, matter, isn't it?
Yes.
What you are they're talking about? What is it? What are you in court for?
There's a defamation
case
pending, but we are not
Defamation
yet.
case.
But that's
nothing to do with the
No, but
substance
that
of
is what we are told.
In fact,
That because you say your life was being threatened and blah blah blah, blah. Is that not the case?
that matter is with the police and is with the court.
It's in the court. So we're not going to go into that,
leg
but
of the matter is being
yes.
handled.
So at this stage, Abna, all I will say is that for a criminal matter, I will just have to wait. Let's let them go through it, and then we'll come and find out
exactly.
whether
We'll
there's
wait
any
for
merit in
Mr.
it or otherwise,
Matinamidu to go through the investigations and decide whether or not it's to be put before. Yes, Mr. Samjord, your perspective on this.
Well, Abina, it's interesting that for a government that is in a hurry and that seeks to want to be seen to be fighting corruption, the Office of Special Prosecutor, about 4 months on since his approval, we've not been able to completely set up that office. I mean, I ask myself if we could have pomp and pageantry and rush through other less, in quotes, less important functions, why would we not speed up and expedite the setting up of Mr. Matinamidu's office? Because reading the letter that Mr. Matinamidu, the response to Duncan Amwa, where he speaks about the fact that the divisions have not even been established under his office, I'm asking myself, would we ever see the special prosecutor take full flight even in this calendar year? I'm left to wonder, because there appears to be a certain lethargy all of a sudden. It's like, and this is characteristic of several government policies. You had a Ghana card, pomp and pageantry, September 15th, the president was presented a card. As we speak, since that date, we've been given 4 different dates by the vice president, nothing to show for it. Ghana Post GPS, nothing to show for it. Nursing and teacher training allowances, nothing to show for it. We have fanciful launches by this government and rollouts of things. Nothing ever gets shown for it. 1 district, 1 factory, 1 village, 1 dam, zilch. It's the same way you're having the special prosecutor's office with all the pomp and pageantry around it. And as we speak, petitions have gone. You expect the special prosecutor to start working on it, to bring people to justice, irrespective of their political coloration. Nothing is being done because the office is not even set up and ready yet. You know, I listened to Gary's submission, my brother Gary. And just like in previous submissions he had made, he said he's unaware of several things. I mean, this government is clearly unaware of several things.
Unaware of what?
Oh, when we spoke recently about the special assistants, you said you were unaware of the situation there.
He said he didn't know. He needed to verify.
He's unaware.
It's fine.
And I'm not bothered about it because even the president is unaware of several things.
Carry on with your
So
point,
being unaware of something is a trademark of this government.
You must clarify the matter.
You know, and so the bottom line here is that this boss matter, is one that we have discussed extensively. The facts have been established. Nobody
the facts have been established by who?
Oh, let me highlight the facts that have been established. That nobody, because
there's a petition before the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
I'm
Let's
not
process. I mean,
going
when
to
you say
discuss.
facts have been established,
If you let me, I'll let you realize which facts have been established by my
Gary,
understanding.
You are the moderator.
Yes.
Oh,
Just
Gary
no,
now
no.
wants to show
You
us.
are the
Just a
moderator,
minute.
and you see
Allow me.
because the respondent is not here.
Allow me. That's what
We are not careful.
So then, Gary, you should have a problem with production for even bringing this topic
Mr.
up.
Sam George,
Yeah, because
carry
we
on,
have a petition
carry on,
here.
but be
The response is not
guided.
here.
Be guided though that
Absolutely.
no facts have been established yet. So please.
In my view, certain
As
facts.
it is, they're all allegations yet to be.
Well. In my view, certain facts have been established, and these are the facts that have been established. And I'll give you the reason why I say they are facts that have been established. That there was some contaminated oil. Bost, that allegation has been made. Bost has not denied that contamination of oil did happen. That contaminated oil was sold to a private company is an allegation that has been made by COPEC. It's an allegation that has not been disputed by Bost. The issue in dispute right now is the occasioning of loss to the state in terms of revenue. That is what is an issue. But the issue about contamination and the sale of same, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any dispute over it because Bost
the
has
matter
not.
that COPEC you have sent to the Office of the Special Prosecutor is in respect of the sale of the crude oil to BB Energy or the earlier contaminated oil.
In fact, we have invoked his
because this one
office
was
on
not necessarily
12
called.
on 12 specific matters. 12.
And this is what he's responded.
And there are a lot in that 12. And
Very,
one of
including
them
what
happens
he
to be
said.
what he's
Carry on.
You
Mr.
understand?
Sanders, yeah.
So the point for me is there are certain matters that are not in dispute. Okay. And those are the things we need to talk about. And for me, as for the special prosecutor, and let's establish a fact. When a case goes before the special prosecutor, it's not even sub judice. It is not before a court of law. So there is nothing that stops us from discussing the merits and details of that matter. When the special prosecutor decides to take up prosecution in court, then it becomes sub judice. Then you say that it is a matter before a court of competent
But the point,
jurisdiction.
yes, I'm saying,
So,
what's the use of us going back and forth saying this happened, this didn't happen? How useful is that? Because the information is already out there. People have put whatever,
So then we shouldn't be
whatever
having this
judgment they want to
conversation
put
at
on.
all
We're
in
talking
the
about the
program.
new development in this matter, which is a response by the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
And my point
so
is
we
that
can
that
talk about
response,
that.
the response,
So that's
the
fine.
response for me is of very little consequence. The response from the special prosecutor tells us that his office has not been set up. What we want to hear from the special prosecutor is that he's commencing investigations. So discussing a response that says that my office has not been set up 4 months after I've been appointed is a failing of this government. It's a failing of the whole setup of the office of the special prosecutor. And for me, that doesn't tickle me one bit. What will tickle my fancy and what is going to get me excited is hearing the special prosecutor say that we've received your petition, we're setting this date out, we've commenced investigation into it, and on the completion of our investigation, we'll let you know when we're going to start pressing charges if we can establish a prima facie case. Failure of the special prosecutor to say this, it's just, for me, that letter is just a display of the fine gentleman's handwriting and signature.
Very
That's
well.
all.
We have just about 23 minutes more to go, and we'll be looking at World Press Freedom Day, which was celebrated or commemorated this week, May 2nd, May
Won't discuss the
3rd. And that Ghana hosted that commemoration. When we come back, we will look at that. Let's take a break. You're watching and listening to Newday Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Newday Saturday edition live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're online at tvnews.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we'll be looking at the commemoration of World Press Freedom Day, and the commemoration was hosted by Ghana, and it happened on the 2nd and 3rd of May this week, and a number of issues came out of the discussions that were held at the seminar to commemorate the day. Of course, two main issues standing out were the access to information coming under the Right to Information Bill, and the fact that the bill has remained unpassed for the longest of time, almost 18 years. What is happening? Another issue also that came up strongly had to do with attacks on journalists, and the fact that this seems not to be going away anytime soon, particularly attacks by law enforcement agencies. We'll be looking at that. So indeed, Ghana is noted as a country that is progressive when it comes to press freedom. We're rated quite high, and I believe Freedom House puts us at fairly free, a drop from free. Is it partly free or so? So clearly there's been a drop in there, but we do enjoy some press freedom here. The Constitution 1992 guarantees that, and the media personnel in Ghana to some extent do that, but of course there are some infractions here and there. Clara, I would want you to start us off with this one, your views on this.
Oh, it's a great day. Of course, I'm sure that at this stage of our democracy, we all know the importance of the media at this stage in our democratic setup. What I would advocate for again is the Freedom to Information Act. The bill should be passed. The bill, it's needed for media freedom. And especially in our fight against corruption, if we are really very serious about this, our fight against corruption, the bill should be passed. So I'm looking forward to the bill being passed, hopefully at least committed effort, and then as priority was given to other acts, that priority will be given to this act as well, so that we make it easier for people, everyone to get information, and hopefully improve the media space, the freedom of the media, and then also in the corruption fight.
But this RTI bill was recently withdrawn from Parliament because it was deemed not to be of an urgent nature. And Sam George, I'm sure when we get to that point, you would speak to that, what is happening with the RTI bill in Parliament and where we are at now, what the prospects are moving forward. Gary?
Yes, I think that press freedom has come very far in this country. Look, we have evolved from the era of culture of silence, the era where even in this country, those times when even you are speaking to your parents or they are also even having a chat, they were even afraid to speak. All the way to the era where there were even the press were also censored, and then the criminal libel were all in place, and then through the instrumentality of now the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, then Attorney General, led the process to decriminalize that process. To the extent that now we have plurality of the media. You know, the airwaves have been opened up. People can speak freely without any criminal sanctions. To the extent that now people have been taking advantage to use a free speech to even say certain things to criminalize other people. But in all this, the president says, I prefer a media that makes the noise, the media that will criticize my administration, the media that will ensure that my administration is free, transparent, open to society, to the media that will be stifled. Now, I think that within the media is a fourth essence of the realm, as you have always described them. It's very, very important that the media ought to be free so they can do their work in a democratic society. Without the media, it will be very, very difficult for us to progress as a society, because without that, definitely you cannot say anything. That's the bottom line. Now, one angle that I think we must also look at critically is that in the course of media men pursuing their trade, there has been some few problems with some media men. You know, they have been attacked, some of them by police and other things. And I think that is not right. I think the police and everybody concerned must ensure that they allow the media men to do their work in a free democratic society, a society that respects the rule of law, so that at the end of the day, we can ensure that the media people do their work free, devoid of any intimidation or any fear. But I think that we have come very, 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 very far. And this president is very tolerant to the media. If you look at the attack, people have attacked him personally. Abna, this is the most vilified president in the history of our country. The most vilified president. They have insulted him in his personal life, in everything. But he has been very tolerant. He has kept his cool and made sure that, look, the media, even under his presidency, they should do their work. So I think, given our background and where we came from as a nation, we've come very, 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 very far. And I think, by and large, we also commend Parliament, of which my brother Sam George is part of it, to take steps to ensure that access to information, that bill is passed. But that notwithstanding, you can still access information as a citizen of Ghana through the constitutional right to write to the relevant agency or institution to demand for information. And if they fail, obviously you can go to court to compel them to bring the information. But I think that process, people think it's a longer process. But that notwithstanding, the right information is still available under our constitution. It's not that if you want information, you cannot get it. But they want an easier, freer access to the information, so that at the end of the day, if for some reason they think that some government agency or ministry or department is involved in something that they want to know. They too, they can know to really know what exactly is going on in our governance structure. But I think that the president is committed to ensuring that there is free and open society in our democracy, to ensure that our country, the pressmen, women, you can apply your trade freely without anybody intimidating you or any of you having the condition to fear that you can't do your work.
But even though we do, in the midst of all that, there are still some attacks on media personnel, which we need to...
As I said, they are worrying situations. Sure. These are isolated incidents which I think the IGP ought to also train his men. Sometimes if you look at the clips, we were in this country when Let My Vote Count and others went on a demonstration, peaceful one, and the police attack on them was too brutal. Recently, I saw a UFM reporter going to report a story at the police headquarters and look at the attack. Yeah. These are matters that I think that the IGP ought to look at them. But by and large, looking at the generality, you can see that media freedom in this country has hardly improved. Sure. So I'm not surprised that we're, I think they should give us, a much more better grade than they gave us, because in some countries, the media cannot operate. In Egypt and other places, if the media even speak in some way, the media, the journalists themselves are in prison, and they are told that, look, your publication is criminal publication. Sure, but we don't. But we don't have that one here. So good, I think that we should commend the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, that in his time as Attorney General, he led the process, to ensure that we decriminalize the criminal libel law, to open our media space for the media to do their work in a free and
very
open.
Well. Thank you,
environment.
Mr. Nimako, for that one. Duncan.
Well, let me start by congratulating the press in Ghana. There are obviously challenges if you look at how much media owners are paying journalists. As to whether they would be allowed to work freely is also another thing. But wide and largely, the media in Ghana have traveled. They've gone very far. As to whether the media doesn't get a bit too political sometimes, that's another thing. But I'm sure that as we grow as a country, we'll get to a point where the media recognize the power they have, even above the politician. And we would continue to work hand in hand with the media for the betterment of people. But as to whether there are still people who try to suppress certain kinds of information from coming out, I think that is where the GJA and the media fraternity itself should be concerned. Unless, of course, some of these information that we speak about sometimes are that detrimental. But there are times where the media is prevented from picking up shots. When you look at the multimedia journalist at the police headquarters, just asking a harmless question and he ends up being brutalized that way, it leaves the others a bit frightened sometimes around security installations and, doing their work peacefully. Right. And I think that the security agencies would need to be a little more tolerant of the media. I don't think they will be there to destroy the security apparatus if you give them the right information, if you give them the right education. But by and large, we are getting there, except that we are not there yet, if you ask me. Yeah, but the aspiration is to get there. Okay, quickly. Hopefully. So, yes. The Media Foundation for West Africa, I came across a statement they had issued in 2014, and that was titled Ghana Losing the Free Press Status. That was in 2014. And at the time, I think we were rated free, completely free by Freedom House. And then a year after, it's reported that we dropped to partly free. So clearly, the Media Foundation for West Africa had anticipated, or, as it were, predicted a fall if things were not done right. That definitely isn't good on our reputation as a country, and indeed, a country that is noted to be leading in democratic credentials and all of that. That is worth noting. So
With the number of attacks we are seeing, or we have seen over the past, if we're not too careful, we perhaps would drop on that rating by Freedom House, which is quite worrying. Definitely you would want to touch on that, Mr. Samjoy, but also the RTI bill. According to Professor Kakari, who is, I mean, a renowned, media person, he says he doesn't think the passage of the RTI bill is a priority to the political class. Do you share that opinion?
Well, let me say that we want to celebrate all journalists in this country who are doing a good job. The fact that we sit here today to even have this discussion is by the virtue of the hard work of journalists who have actually done the stories in the course of the week that we're discussing, or yourself and your colleagues who are putting this platform together for us. So we celebrate all of you. The RTI bill is something that is currently before Parliament. It's been referred by Mr. Speaker to a joint committee of Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs and the Communications Committee. I'm a member of the Communications Committee. We've had one meeting on it already. We intend to have a couple of engagements in the coming week. On Tuesday, we're having a public stakeholders forum in Parliament.
Coming Tuesday.
Coming Tuesday. As soon as we finish that on Tuesday.
How widely publicized is that?
Parliament has issued a statement on it, but I'm using this platform also to let the public know that we're having that in Parliament at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. As soon as we finish that on Tuesday, on Wednesday we're out of Accra for a line by line. We're going to spend 3 days, Wednesday to Friday, where we want to take the articles, the clauses, line by line, and begin to interrogate them. I have personal opinions about the RTI as it sits right now. I don't think that is really going to give us any true access to information, because there are certain exempt clauses in there. I mean, most people who want to get information want to find out information from government. And it's the exempt clauses that has kept us where we are, because that seems to be the bone of contention. And I really don't see much change here, because anything that is on its way to cabinet, that has been decided by cabinet or has been approved by cabinet, is exempt. So tell us. Anything how soon are we going to get this? Well, we're going to take it line by line and we'll see. I mean, again, yeah, we have to take our time and go line by line and pick up, because I, for example, and this is not something I've hidden, I am going to be an advocate on that committee in Parliament to determine that certain exemptions must be erased. If we really want to have access to information for the general public, you can't ring-fence government information. Even when it is not a cabinet issue and it is at a government agency, the minister can choose to say that it borders on high policy, national security, and decline you access to that information. Again, the minister can choose and there are huge costs involved with I believe that the cost of accessing the information is even too high. So these are several issues we want to debate. As to how government will be willing to engage with us on it is another matter, but that's on the RTI. Quickly, coming to the attacks on, time is up. Wow. Coming to the attacks on journalists, there was a program recently by the Media Foundation, where the Media Foundation for West Africa said that in the past 15 months, there are 17 reported cases. Look, let's not play politics with attack on journalists. It cuts across all political divides. Take, for example, Latif Idris. He was covering the demonstration when Koko Anyidoho was arrested. He's not NDC, he's not NPP, he's a journalist. He approaches the police to ask the police, what is the name of the vehicle that you have here? That is his offense, and he's brutalized. And you can't just for the life of you begin to appreciate it. The last point I'll make is a point made by His Excellency the President when he addressed the journalists from across the world on fake news and the need for us to watch fake news. And my position is the President must lead on that charge. You have people who are paid with the taxpayers' money today in the Flagstaff House who are peddling fake news. The President himself is on record to have peddled fake news when he accused former President Mahama of printing presidential diaries to the tune of $10 million without any proof. When he accused former President Mahama of building the Kaswa interchange at an inflated price. So he's a beneficiary of fake news. So I agree that we need to curb fake news. We need to control fake news, but we must lead by example. And that's a take home here. Let's just deal with that. But thank you so much, panelists, and also the viewers and listeners out there for making a date with us.
We do appreciate your contributions and you making a date with us. Thank you to the panelists, Mr. Sam George, Mr. Duncan Amwa, Clara Berry Kasati, and Mr. Gary Nimakon. We'll see you here same time next week. Bye-bye.